I'm C.T. Butler. I'm one of those people that's been poly since before I can remember. I mean, I kind of came of age as a poly person. So for me, what that looked like was I graduated from high school in 1971. That's the peak of the protest against the Vietnam War. And I went to college, a liberal arts college I studied religion and philosophy. While I was there, the Vietnam War ended. I met a girl, we got engaged, and the deal that I understood was I was saying, I'm going to marry you, and then we're going to be sexually exclusive and monogamous the rest of our lives. And as a philosopher and as a person studying religion and philosophy, I couldn't make that promise to the person I loved if it wasn't true. And I knew in my heart it wasn't true. I could not make that promise. So we didn't get married. And that broke my heart, but I didn't know what to do about that. And so I spent the next 15 years of my life trying to figure out why I couldn't do that, what was wrong with me. And in the early 80s, throughout the 80s, there were no resources like Loving More or anything like that to find out, oh, there's this thing called polyamory. There wasn't even the word polyamory at that time. So I was unaware that there was an option. And I was trying to figure out, there was even a time when I thought I was gay, because I thought maybe that's what was going on for me. But that very clearly wasn't what was going on. I'm very clearly primarily attracted to women, although I guess technically I'm bisexual. But because I was willing to experiment there, I was okay with that. It just wasn't my identity. And so what that looked like for me during those 15 years of exploration was that when I would meet a woman and go on a date, if she found, I would be transparent. I would admit that I'm not marriage material, I'm not looking to get married, and I'm also into this kind of relationship style, which means that we stay open to other possibilities. If they weren't immediately out the door at that moment, if they were willing to see me again, then what typically happened was that there would be this date, 3 to 6 months down the road, we've got to dinner. And it'd be a great dinner, we'd be fairly nostalgic, we talked about all the great times we had. And we'd get to dessert, and she'd say to me, CT, you're a great guy. You're my best friend. You listen, you're friendly, you're cooperative, you're a great lover, whatever. Whatever she said, all this wonderful stuff that would end with, and I'm breaking up with you. And I would typically say, couldn't you just say that I have bad breath and you don't like the fact that I leave the cap off the toothpaste and that's why you're leaving? I mean, that would at least give you something to hang my hat on, but it doesn't make sense to me. I know what you're saying, and that's what everybody does, but I don't understand that. I never understood. I didn't get it. I don't have that gene. And so I always, during that era, during my 30s, up to my 30s, in my early 30s, I thought that I was broken and alone, and that I was never going to be in a long-term relationship. I was never going to get, have kids or do anything like that. And that wasn't so bad, because by that point I was a political activist. I am one of the co-founders of the political movement Food, Not Bombs. And so that started in 1980, so all through the 80s I was doing that as well. And so I was very active in grassroots political struggles of the day. And but what started happening, just because of who I am, was that I started organizing discussion groups. Because I wanted to see if there was anybody out there who had a similar approach to relationships that I had. And sure enough, I started finding that there were other people. And in fact, my first community of people that I found was actually within what's now known as the intentional communities movement, which is really, from my perspective, an outgrowth of what we now refer to as the hippie commune movement, the back to the land movement of the late 60s, early 70s, has continued to grow. And within that general community of people, there's a lot of polyamorous folks. And they've been there a long time. So I found those folks, and that was very helpful. But then I also started finding a lot of other people as well, and then in 1992, the first East Coast Loving More conference happened, and I was at that, and that was the first time that we actually saw sort of our tribe come together, because by that point, I had organized quite a few discussion groups, And it was kind of funny because Ryan Nearing, who was organizing that conference, when I suggested that my workshop title was going to be The Politics of Polylove, because we didn't have the word polyamory at the time, so it's actually written down, polylove. And she didn't think it was going to be well attended, because she didn't think polys were interested in politics. For her, it was two separate issues. And so a lot of people came to my workshop, probably about, 70 or 80 people came to the workshop, packed the room. It was in a little farmhouse, so the whole room was packed, and it was people in the windows. It was sort of like something out of The Wizard of Oz. There was people in the windows and down the hall and people everywhere. It was kind of fun. And Ryan was totally surprised, and I've been involved ever since at that level, up until at least the more recent times. Well, the very beginnings of what might be called the poly movement included, it was primarily, even my personal story, it was primarily about providing support and resources for people who were searching for other ways of having relationships. And to let people know there are other people out there who are doing this, and you don't have to go it alone. That's its primary, that's where it came from, that's what it's about. I was invited by the group ACT UP Maine to train them in nonviolence because they wanted to do some very strong protest about the AIDS crisis in Portland, Maine. They wanted to risk arrest and do a nonviolent direct action, and they wanted me to train them in how to do that. So I got involved. And then I made very dear friends out of this community of primarily gay men. So it was a big issue in that era, and so in the very early 90s. And so from that experience, I went to a lot of meetings, and I got to know a lot of gay men, and I heard this story over and over, which now is somewhat public, in the sense that a gay teenager would grow up and would think that they were the only one, that they were alone, and they would be suicidal until they got old enough to find out there actually are other people like them out there, and if they were lucky enough, they could move to a metropolitan area where they could have a community, and then they'd find their love of their life and have a story then happily ever after. And I heard those testimonies over and over. And one day I was sitting there, and I was listening to it, and it dawned on me that that's my story too, only it took decades. And that I was coming of age to my own identity by struggling with who I am. It was really a powerful moment. I was like, whoa.